Um, I was a victim of an assault and a kidnapping as a young child, and the result of that was that even though I was a wounded child, my own neighborhood, my own family sort of began to shun me and just put me aside some because I was damaged. And that experience and recovering from that really gave me the motivation for lots of things that I do. We also almost became homeless when my father died very young. So I know that also that feeling of not having of wondering if you're going to have a home and a place to put your pillow and all those things. So the result of all this is that I really endeavor to speak for the disenfranchised, for the disabled, for the other. But to do that, I have to listen to their stories. I need to ask questions and find the core of people. People have so much courage. It's astounding what people survive and how much resilience people have. And how do they get that resilience? And how can we feed that? So I want to see here. What I try to do then is to listen and study and ask questions, and then be sure to put my feet in the right place and then stand firm. But there's always a but, right? I also learned that to be effective, I have to figure out what part of my beliefs and principles are negotiable and what's non-negotiable. I have to be true to myself, and that is not always easy. And I have to tell the truth to myself. And honestly, check out when I have a feeling or a thought about someone. Is it helpful? Is it nonsensical? Does it contain prejudices that I harbor? So I try not to make assumptions, and I try not to take things personally, but we do have to make decisions. And it was a whole lot easier to tell Mike what I thought, how he ought to vote, than to stand and make my own vote. And that has been a learning lesson for me. So I focus on early childhood education, on parent education, on the health of our youth, and on housing. A very wise supervisor once told me that I wasn't responsible for the outcomes of things, but I was responsible for my efforts. And I remind myself of that because there's not a lot of things we all can control, but we can control our efforts. And also a belief I have that I was not going to let the world change me. And I try to foster that belief in everyone that I meet. I'm going to change the world instead. And I know that I can't change a lot of things in the world, but I can change my little part of it. And so that I can feel proud when the time comes that I'm not an elected person anymore, or I'm not even on this earth anymore, that I left it a better place. And I also hope that I left some beauty in it, which I also work on. So let me see if I've said everything I wanted to say. The blessings you asked, what are the blessings? Well, the blessing is to feel so trusted that somebody would actually vote for you and think that you could actually carry the needs and the problems of our whole community and of people and make a good decision about that. I have learned more about culverts and garbage hauling and tipping fees than I ever thought I'd ever learn in my life. The challenge for me is that, as I said before, it isn't always easy to make a decision. And I have to also decide about money. All of us elected people decide about money. and there's never enough, and there's an unending need for it, and who gets it. And every time I vote one way, I think I'm probably hurting some other thing, and that's hard to live with. So I think about, those are things I think about as I when I have a quiet moment. And the other thing I've learned about myself is to know that my word matters. I need to be honest with myself, and I need to be honest with other people, even when it's not easy. Well, a lot of times it's not easy to say things that you know other people don't want to hear. So that's what I have to say tonight. I appreciate this, and I look up here at my screen and I see all these people that I respect and love working with, and think how it's like it's up there, and I see it. It's kind of like a big thunderbird, that all of these people that are up here are flying over this community and enfolding it and keeping it safe and protecting it. So maybe that's as spiritual as I'm going to get tonight. So thank you for this time, and I think I'm done talking.
Thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate that. Beautiful reflection.
Can I ask a question? There's a big banner right across the screen that says this meeting is being recorded, and I only have a choice: to got it or leave the meeting. But I can't see myself. I can't see you. Do I push got it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There.
Yep.
Thank you. So I was speaking to the banner all the time.
You had plenty of smiling and reacting faces in
Oh,
all in
good.
good ways, all in supportive ways. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Jess Garcia. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you, and I appreciate the invitation to be here. And thank you, Stephanie, for sharing your reflections. I can't wait to hear everyone else's. I was actually pleasantly surprised to get this invitation because I am sort of I don't know, like a fringe kid, I guess, in terms of religion and spirituality. I was born and raised Catholic, and very early in my childhood, I realized that that religion no longer fit me, and the size and the contents of my soul and character were much different than the church that I grew up in. But it did influence me in a lot of ways. My paternal grandparents, I think, truly do what they believe to be God's work, which I think pretty much my entire life has been social justice, even though I didn't understand that that's what it was called at the time. They are the type of people that would literally give you the shirt off their back or their last dollar. And I was raised, in a sense, with that sort of ethic, that if you have something someone doesn't have, because you are able, mightn't you just give that to the person who needs it because you can acquire it later? You have the resources, or you have the strength. And I think that served me well, certainly in running for office, but this was not something that I had thought to do, really, even though I've heard almost all my life that I would be a great lawyer or a politician. But I ended up being a psychologist, which to me, sometimes those things feel very much at odds. And sometimes I think each of them helps me in a different way. But in terms of like this, spirituality of me and the civics values in me and how they overlap, I think the easy answer to that is just kind of right out of the gate, I was expected in just our family dynamic to help others. And I think I was able to do that even when religion was sort of evasive, or the thing that I wanted to get out of it was evasive. And so I've kind of had my path. I actually come from the UU Church in Marblehead, Massachusetts. Most immediately, I lived in that area for a number of years, and I had never even heard of Unitarian Universalism until I moved to Massachusetts as an adult. So I feel like I was sort of adopted by the church, came to Rochester, or moved back to Rochester, I should say, in January 2020, and came to maybe 1 or 2 services right before the pandemic. So I also have not been to many services with you. So in terms of how my spiritual and ethical beliefs impacted my desire to run for public office, in truth, I don't think that I would have thought that made a difference. It was more of a calling, I suppose, that other people expected or required or demanded of me, that because I have this capability, mightn't I finally run? And actually, Stephanie Podolsky was a huge play in that. I was kind of deciding, I think early last year, might I do this? And she was a wonderful counsel to me. And I think in that conversation, I realized that I had a code of ethics and that I had a sort of level of spirituality or religion that, yes, those two things certainly merge together, and but it feels more like it's me. Like I am the thing that influences my spirituality and my ethics rather than them, influencing me in reverse. Although I'm sure that that's quite true, but I feel like I've just grown so much. I grew up kind of in an apolitical household in a very strong Mexican and Irish Catholic influence from both sides of my family. And I've grown in very different directions from those places. And I think a lot of it is just being so open and willing to experience the world around me and allowing that to influence me and change me. So I've evolved quite a bit. And serving in public office, when you ask about the blessings, the challenges, and the growth, I think similarly to Stephanie, the blessing was I can't even believe people voted for me. I was pretty sure that I wasn't going to win because it's hard to unseat an incumbent, and I kicked butt. So I was really surprised by that. But I think that I also get to hear so many other voices that I don't normally hear. And everyone's story to me is a blessing, even if it's a different story than mine, or a story sometimes maybe that's difficult to hear for me. I find that each person who feels the need to contact me for whatever reason is doing so because they believe that they should be heard, and they're taking the chance that I would listen, whether that's reading or, messages on social media or, phone calls, sometimes really angry ones, even those sometimes can feel a little bit of a blessing. The challenges, I will say, are not at all like I expected. And I think hearing other electeds say the same thing makes me not feel so alone in that, because I knew it would be a challenge just running in general, even in the best of times. And I knew that it would be difficult because of the pandemic and in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder. I got it. I understood that this was going to be a challenge. But when I started in January, it was 2021, only 10 months ago. It has been so incredibly challenging in a way that, to be honest, sometimes feels a little soul-breaking. But I think because I have enough resources and support and other people who are sort of going through the same thing, it's easier to lean on them. But it doesn't make me want to shy away from the work. It makes me want to work harder to stay in it, because obviously we're needed to be here. And I see all of read, I guess, all of the news articles about electeds, stepping down all over the country. And that it hurts me because I understand probably a lot of why that's happening. I have certainly thought about it, but I guess the more challenging it becomes, the more I want to stay. And I think in terms of the ethical growth, it's hard, I think, as a psychologist, where we have a very clear ethics code, and how we interact and respond to people doesn't always feel the same in politics. The thing that I would naturally do is something I can't do because it's a violation of open meeting law or someone's contract or whatever. And so sometimes that's difficult. And it's difficult when other people also don't understand that, and having to educate them, because it really just feels like I'm giving excuses. But it has stretched me in many different ways, that I think still in the end for me are blessings. So I think that this position right now for me has been a long time coming, and I'm glad that I finally listened to the voices who are asking me to do this. It has been incredibly challenging, incredibly, it's an experience that I just, unless you're going through it, I don't necessarily think that I could really put words to it. But I'm glad that I'm here, and I'm in such great company. So everybody that's on this call, and even the people who aren't, I feel like there must be a reason that there are so many of us who receive this invitation. And even if we're not regulars at the church, it feels like there's some common thread there. And I respect every single one of you. And so I'm glad that I'm here. And for those of you who are listening and not elected, I really appreciate you being here as well. You are also one of my blessings.
Thank you, Jess. Wonderful reflection. So we're gonna go to our next panelist, and agreed, such a mighty cloud of witnesses here, a mighty group of people. So Kim Norton, serving as mayor, welcome. Glad you're here this evening.
Hello, thank you. This actually is one of the more difficult events I've attended, and it surprises me to even say that. But my beliefs, my membership to this church have been front and center criticized for the last 3 years, publicly, repeatedly. That's been very difficult for me. And for those of you that know me, and some of you do pretty well, like Jess, I came from a Catholic background. Like Stephanie, and I'm not going to discuss it, I too had traumas in my life. And the kind of abuse that's been happening, and when someone picks on my spiritual choices, has resonated and hit me in places I just can't even explain to you. This has been a very difficult 3 years. When I joined the UU Church, it was when I was a school board member. Like Jess, I was in I'd been in a couple years. I was struggling. I had already left the Lutheran church. I had tried that after being a Catholic for most of my, childhood, and couldn't get past some of the doctrine. And somebody said, well, why don't you try my church? And I walked into the UU church, and I looked around, and I said, my heart was full. I knew everyone there. There were very few people I didn't know. I said, these are my people. I have been found. It was just such a wonderful moment for me. And in addition to that, Paul Scanlon, who was serving on the school board at the time, was one of the members. And he said, oh, thank God you've joined the church, when I finally did, because I'm going to be retiring, and we always have to have a UU on the school board. There is a very, very long history of UUs on the Rochester School Board. I have the document somewhere. I mean, it goes way back, Jess, so good for you. And UUs have served in office for a long time. Sheila was there. I felt at home. So for me, the beliefs and the values and the ethics of the UU Church speak to me, deep. And they are what has inspired me to lead and to be involved and to try to make a difference in the world, to treat everyone with dignity, to work on equity issues and sustainability issues, because I love the earth, and the earth is part of the spirituality that I get. And the UU Church has not only embraces that, but allows me to have that Native American, belief of the earth, the Mother Earth is, I'm not Native American. I have none of that in my blood. But when I read and when I attend the church and I hear those messages, it resonates with me. So that's been super important to me. And so the criticism that's been happening has been really difficult for me. And for some of you who may have noticed, I attended one of the church services, accidentally was attending as mayor, and said good morning, and all hell broke loose on social media because I said good morning. It was ridiculous. I will say one of the toughest things that I've been dealing with, however, is the church state issue. So I can live my values through my leadership and my service. That's great. But someone in our community turned me in to the Freedom for Religion Foundation for attending an evangelical service. And I got a letter my first year, not the second year, I got a threat of a lawsuit. And it has been so hard for me to even go to those events and to set aside my personal values to honor other people's religious choices. And as some of the two speakers before, you have to set aside those personal things and do the job that's in front of you and honor everyone's choices. So I've tried so hard to do that. And then to have that come back at me when I have had to dig deep in order to attend the events and build the relationships with people that have such different views than me and that don't necessarily stand for what I stand for, but they're constituents and I owe them and I honor their choice, right? And then to have someone threaten lawsuit for me over attending an event that I had such difficulty with has really been hard. So I think Michael Spindler-Craig, who's the city's attorney, is also a UU, has been helping me try to draft a response to deal with this because it is an ongoing issue now, 2.5 years in or almost 3 years in, trying to deal with that. So one of the ways, the other ways I've dealt with some of how my spirituality and my religion plays into my job really had to do with civility, which, as you all know, it's out the window. It's not a popular thing anymore. And it too had its landmine, just the term civility, not what you do with it, but the term civility had its own interesting issues. But that's where I tried, like, raising the bar in my role as a leader, is to say, we can disagree agreeably. We can listen to each other. We don't have to agree. I'm not going to try to convince you, but I will always listen to what you have to say. But I will still, at the end of the day, do what I think is best for our whole community, which is always the reason that I served anyway. So I guess that I'll leave it at that. I appreciate the attempts to keep attendance at a safe place so that I could be here, because Dr. Garcia, dealing with these issues psychologically has been a challenge. And I did not want to be headline news on Facebook tomorrow for talking at my own church, which I just think is horrific. But that's where we're at in this world. And again, people beat me up, but like you, all of you here, I'm staying where I am. So there you have it.
Thank you, Kim. And thank you for sharing as part of this panel, and for your continued leadership in challenging times, and for bearing that witness and testimony in this space. And I'm grateful for you feeling able to do that. So thank you. Kelly Ray is next on our list of distinguished panelists, UU panelists. Kelly, I'm going to change the spotlight here. There you go. Kelly.
Thank you, Luke. Hi, everyone. I didn't take much time to think about these because it seems so ingrained in me and who I am, my deep sense of spirituality and my deep sense of ethics that I have. I'm going to say something that is so very often taken politically and taken out of context. And I've discussed this with my daughter before, and she said to me, "You should never say that, Mom." And I said, why not? Why not? So I am pro-life. And wherever you just went in your mind, you need to dismiss it, because that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean at all. Life is not political. Life is a gift. Life is sacred. Life is a miracle. Life is something that we're all given. Life is something that we have one chance at. Most of us believe. Some of us believe we will have more than one life. Life to me is what motivates me every day when I get up. Life to me is what helps me to embrace the sorrows, the happiness, the angst, the everything that's thrown at me, or everything that I choose to take on. So when I say I'm pro-life, I mean that water is life. When I say I'm pro-life, I mean that I'm against corporations that trash our planet. When I say that I'm pro-life, I mean that I honor you and the life that you're living, no matter what your beliefs are. I will listen and I will try to support you the best that I can. When I say that I'm pro-life, I know that I have raised more children that aren't mine than the ones that I've brought into this world. So first and foremost to me, it's life and the others, capital O, the others on this planet. I think so much of what is viewed as political in today's world is about people, us, the most damaging species on the planet. How do we overcome that? How do we maintain a sense of humility to honor those around us and give them more grace than we perhaps allow ourselves? How do we get ourselves to a place where we say thank you for every living organism that we ingest, that nourishes us and takes us into another day? So for me, servant leadership and ethical leadership were the two chapters in graduate school from one of my textbooks that really, really resonated with me. I'm an advocate, I'm an educator, I'm a designer. And when I put those pieces together, those to me make me a politician. I can't even believe just by the mere fact that I'm holding office, I'm a politician, and it ends right there because I'm not a politician. I am the voice of the people. I honor the people, power to the people, and I'm a politician. So I have to be here for others. And when I think about the life I lived as growing up and where I've become now, and how I used to say I really preferred plants to people, I have learned so much over the course of this last year to really enjoy and embrace the people I speak with, the people that come to me and ask me for help, the people that yell at me, the people that have hurt my feelings, the people that honor who I am and the work that I do and that thank me. Every day I get up and I just think, wow, what another great thing to be able to do what I'm doing to help the folks in this city so that we can continue to get up every day and take this place we call home forward to a better tomorrow, to something where we can find more unity, to a place where we can sustain what we have now and bring it forward into the future for 5, 6, 7 generations from where we are now. I'm going to stop there. Thanks.
It's beautiful, Kelly Ray. The only thing I'd take issue with is at the beginning, you said you hadn't put a lot of thought into it, but clearly it's all there. It's all there. You've thought about all these issues, so thank you so much. Molly Dennis. Thanks for being here tonight. I'll turn the spotlight over to you. Welcome.
Thank you. I honestly, I don't like to follow Kelly because that was very articulate, which if you've watched the city council meetings, I am not always articulate. I tend to get really passionate and the ADHD brain, squirrel. But I'm so blessed and humbled to be invited to this panel, to be on the panel. Is so exciting. It's just such an honor to be elected into a place of public trust and service. I have my 3 kids. They're at their dad's right now, but they do a lot of chores around the house here, and they're always like, "Oh, we don't want to do chores." I'm like, "Well, you're part of the family. We do chores, right? Because we love each other." And so I feel that service to others, helping each other, is because we're part of a humanities family. And I'm really and believing that some people have lost that, and we need to come back and say that service to others is what we do because we're in this together. I've always think, people, some religions, are maybe a little focused on the afterlife. UUs, I've believed we're focused on UU, the here and now, that we're all in this together, that we outlive ourselves when we give back, when we ripple through generations by helping people. So that's what I think, I've always believed when I was in the school district. So I thought about running for a school board, but conflict of interest, I wasn't able to run. But when I saw the open position of Ward 6, and the 5 gentlemen who were running for that position, they didn't resonate with the values that I felt were needed for a better tomorrow. And so I ran. It was amazing. My whole life, in college and adult life, I've held those signs and went to the rallies and tried to influence the policymakers. So to be elected was beyond humbling, that you can actually make policy and have that role to amplify voices and for the underrepresented and the vulnerable of our population who don't have a voice. And as a para, before taking office, paras make $1,100 a month full-time, very, very poverty wage. And I would be a whistleblower. I'd say things I thought were not right and got reprimanded for it. And so one of the best parts of this job is that's part of my job, is to be a whistleblower, to call out things. And oddly enough, unless you do something terrible, elected officials are kind of unfireable, right? We can really make a difference. We can really vote for the things that are important and that would reflect for a better tomorrow. And I find that really amazing. You can be a whistleblower. You can speak up and take a stand against injustice, and that's part of the job. So that's what I love about my position. I didn't know the challenges. I didn't know people would be taking pictures of me, at the swimming pool with my kids without a mask, or people were throwing, dog droppings in my yard and chucking them at my playhouse and things like that. So that was, that was a tough to see the amount of contempt. And I think that they said that on the news, contempt and narcissism is up and empathy is down, which is really sad. And I can't remember the study, but all of the elected officials did some kind of a leadership. I can't remember the name of it, but it's like a very scientific based, like, where are you with your leadership traits? And the top 5 that I came back with after doing this comprehensive study was connectivity, empathy, positivity, ideation, and developer. Those were my top 5. And I don't know, I think not very many people on the council, or maybe there's not a lot of empathy at the top 5. And so that's one of those things I look through with everything I do. And it gets me in trouble too, because not everyone, not all of the society sees that we're connected, and that empathy is, I think, one of the most important things most important traits that's needed in every aspect of life. But when it comes to religion, or views on, I've been a UU, I think, at heart for many, many years. I was involved in the church up in Fargo before I came here in 2007. But I remember going through line at getting an egg bake at another church here in town. I was part of a MOPS group, mothers of preschoolers. And one of the people behind me, she knew me. She goes, "Molly, I heard you're part of that church, the religion without a foundation. Is that true?" And I was like, I just want my egg bake. I didn't want to talk about religion, but I gave the bumper stickers. I said, one light, many windows. That's the Unitarian Universalist. Values over beliefs. You can believe anything. You have I gave these little bumper stickers. But what I should have said to her was, it's love. Love is our religion, like it is your religion and many religions. But that's the focal point that my church that I love so much, focuses on. And so I guess, I don't know, I'm kind of all over. I try to jot down things in my, but a lot of the things that other people before me, I echo. I think that we have, to focus on a better tomorrow, have this philosophy, we're all in this together, and just show that, that we really care about one another. And that's what you use, the philosophies of connectivity, being able to, kindness and love being should be the basis, I think, of all policymaking. So I'm just honored to be part of the church, and I'm very humbled to be elected, because hopefully, and I heard this from another wonderful colleague in the public realm, in years from now, we want to look in the mirror and say, we did everything we could to make the world a better place, because this finite time that we have on this planet is the only way to really outlive ourselves is to do the best we can to uplift and help everyone to have a better tomorrow. So, but thank you for having us speak.
Thanks so much, Molly. Beautiful to hear your reflections as well. Greg Wright's next. County Commissioner, I'll get you spotlighted here. There you go. Welcome, Greg. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much. When you first wrote to me and asked me to be part of this panel, I did say yes, but I also said, I'm not sure that I have anything impactful or life-changing or prophetic for anybody doing these things. But let me just give you some of my thoughts about your questions. First of all, you talked about ethics and spirituality, and I kind of agree with Stephanie that spirituality is kind of a little bit mystic to me. Ethics is a little bit more solid for me. But I must say that I didn't find those things in the Unitarian Church. I already had them before. And one of those things is that, when I was younger, I was going to write my own religion, because I wasn't kind of too happy with what was going on. And then I found some stuff on the Unitarian Universalist, and I says, oh, shoot, somebody already wrote it. Doggone it, there goes another idea of mine. And so it was more of a comfort that I could find a match with things. And then you talked about spirituality and ethical growth of being in office. But I would like to say that your ethics has to be very solid before you would ever get in office. Because you're not going to figure it out once you're in office. And you have to have that solid footing, because you are you are bombarded by all sides of things with all kinds of issues, and you kind of have to have a pretty good idea of where you are. Otherwise, you're ping-ponged or a billiard table. And so you do listen. You listen very carefully to what people are saying, and you do those kinds of things. But it's without having really thought about these things ahead of time and having some solid footing, it would be very difficult for people to hold a public office. My background is a little bit different from some of the other people, because I was in education. And wouldn't you know, the doorbell rang while I'm talking, and so my board packet just arrived, so the sheriff's department was there delivering. So, but my wife answered the door. So I'm gonna come back to my thought here. In that, in education, I started not only being an educator, but then I was involved in the union. So I was a union leader, a union officer for many, many years, and including being a state officer for about 15 years. And during that time, it gave me a whole idea on perspective of people and what people can do and what they can't do, and found out that the union was one of those organizations, and as an officer, that for people who couldn't stand up for themselves, you helped them get off their knees. And for people that couldn't speak for themselves, you gave them a voice and you helped them find their voice. And people that had no courage on their own, that couldn't speak for themselves, is that you could provide some of your courage for them and help them through situations. And as I see my political office, I see myself oftentimes doing the same thing for people, to help them help themselves and help them understand how they can make a difference themselves while doing my job, and also to help them. And I think that that's something that as an elected official that I continue to do. And with my background that I've had, it really helps me to do those things. And also as a union leader, and if you're not in a union, if you haven't been a union leader, you know that oftentimes you are the only person in front of a great many people of authority. And if you don't have a voice, and if you don't have courage, you will never be able to speak for other people. So those are the kinds of things that you have to have also to help yourself do that. And I would say that also that not all politicians agree with each other. I'm sure you find that surprising. And sometimes we have to have those kinds of voices to speak to other politicians or other elected officials to help them understand a different point of view, so that you can move the government forward. And I think that I've also received some things because the Unitarians are great philosophers, have written great philosophers. And I often go back to Edward Everett Hale. And I think that that's one of the things that have always led me through many, many things, is that I know I can't do everything. And I know that I'm not going to turn the world upside down, but I can do something. And oftentimes I can do that better than other people that I don't think can do a good job. And so that if I don't put myself forward, and if I don't take that step forward, and if I don't put myself in a position where I can do those things, then I've failed not only myself, but failed the people that I really want to help. So that's my little speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate you sharing and being able to speak to plenty of things that are worthwhile for us to hear and share. So thank you so much for being here. And our last panelist for the evening, Sheila Cascaden. Welcome, Sheila. Glad you're here. I'll move the spotlight there for you. Welcome.
I'm glad to be here. It's part of my, am I unmuted now? Sorry about that. I tried 3 times. Third time was the charm. Glad to be here with you with my church home. I still consider myself a strong Unitarian Universalist, even though I have not made it to a church service in several years. It is part of my retirement plan, though, that I will become more active. There was a time I was very active with the church. So like Kim and Jess, I was raised Catholic. Like Kim and Jess, that faith did not fit for me. And I lost my Catholic faith when I spent a year in South America. And I saw the juxtaposition of the splendor of the church and the poverty of the people. And I didn't feel that there was any connection between the church. And then I met a Jesuit who really convinced me that the church thought of the people as sheep and had no respect for them. And then I came back to the United States and I went to confession. And I've never told this to anyone before, but I had a priest who asked me a lot of very personal questions about my sexuality. And I left that confessional feeling awful. And so I dropped out of the church, and that was painful to my parents. And I spent years without being a member of a church, even though I got married in a Methodist church. I moved to Rochester right after I got married, and I began to work right away in the field of social services because of my experiences in Latin America, where I really wanted to make a difference with my life for people who, particularly people in poverty. And then one day I was invited, I was the first regional coordinator for Planned Parenthood. We got sued. It was really, it was 1970s. So it was a really big deal to serve minors. It was a really big deal to use contraception. And I was invited to speak to the Unitarian Church on a Sunday. You can imagine, like, I've been sued, and I'd walk into a restaurant and people would go, they'd know who you were, our whole staff would be like, strange. So I invited to speak to the church, and one of my staff members was Ann Dentek. Some of you may still remember her, since she and Carl were longtime church members. And I came into the sanctuary, and I stood up to speak. And just like Kim, I looked around and I thought, oh my God, these are the people I most respect in all of Rochester. These are the people who are doing what the Unitarian Universalist website says: live your values out loud, not alone. And seeing these people who were living their values out loud, this was the church for me. So I joined the church way back in 1981 and have found over and over again, wherever I go, the people that I find just commonality with are other Unitarians. And I'm very proud of the contributions that our church members make to this broader community. I'm proud to be one of them and to join forces so often and trying to make a difference. A few years ago, I found a Bible quote that really says it all for me, that really expresses my spirituality. But it is quoted in several different ways. So this, I don't know what version of the Bible I originally heard it from, or what adaptation some minister made to it. But the quote is this: all that Yahweh asks of you is this, only this, to act justly, to love tenderly, and to walk humbly with your Lord. And for me, that quote is a statement of purpose. And I try to live that in the work that I do. I have been called to public service, and I would love to tell you some of the stories, but we're out of time of my many years in public service. But there have been times that I really was very, very distressed by some decision I had to make, or some group that was very furious with me. And there was one particular time when we were adding gay, lesbian, and transgender people to the Human Rights Amendment. I was getting phone call after phone call, and they were so hostile. And I was being asked to speak to one church group after another. And I found myself trudging up my basement stairs one day after one of those nasty phone calls. And it was like the voice of God in my ear. It said, you asked to work on justice issues. I've given it to you. And that was that. I think of that often, because there are other times where, like Stephanie says, it's not easy always to make the decisions, or to know what decision you're going to make is going to have a negative impact someplace else. And in the tenor of times we're in now, which is so partisan and so acrimonious and so quick to offend and so slow to show compassion, empathy, and love, I am so grateful to be part of this church and this church community where we do try to live our values out loud, not alone. And I'm very glad that I don't have to live them alone in my role as an elected official. And so we're out of time, and I will just end it there, and love to tell you long stories some other time when you have more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. And for those interested in finding that, that's from the prophet Micah in the Hebrew Bible, chapter 6, verse 8. A beautiful scripture verse. Thank you for sharing that. So we are at the end of our time. If there is any, I haven't seen any questions in the chat. If you had a quick question, feel free to put it there. Otherwise, I want to express my gratitude both for you joining tonight, knowing that Yes, the topic of politics and religion, especially in the culture and climate and society right now that we're holding, is a place where there's much hostility and tension. To express my gratitude for your leadership within it and mindfulness of what you're holding internally to be able to join in this conversation too. So immense gratitude for that. And keep on keeping on. There's also an old Unitarian tradition where the opposing or opponents on the same ballot would be in the village Unitarian church on the Sunday before Election Day, and it was called the election sermon. And so whatever the preacher would bring to the pulpit that day would be to the candidates that were opposing sides of the same ballot. I'm glad I don't have to do that. That would be a very tall order. And all of you are living these values in beautiful ways, and I appreciate your reflections. Just a few comments in the chat here of gratitude as well. Thanking you for your service, timely and important messages to hear tonight. Gratitude to you all. So as we end, our little flame here is still going, and I'll extinguish that with these words from Wayne Arneson that I think can live at the intersections of spirituality and ethics and politics beyond partisanship. This is from Wayne Arneson, who says, "Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. But take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone." So for our growing sense of community and justice and hope, gratitude for your public service and gratitude for those who joined tonight. We love you. Thank you. Blessings to you all. Good night.